Okay, welcome back. We're just going to try and recap some of the work that we've discussed recently, which is basically along the lines of the ancient world having already melted down. And we found this video of melting a brick with a carbon arc welder, which is great. Definitely recommend watching this. But in today's video, we're going to look beyond that and look into some ideas. For example, there's a lot of talk about brick using blood as possibly the iron element and the way of binding it together. Apparently you could use blood in glue in the olden days. So there seems to be a bunch of stuff on that. Have a look at the composition of bricks a little bit. And then we're going to stretch out a little bit. Look into Africa and look into this massive canyon, Fish River Canyon, and places like that that are very reminiscent of the Grand Canyon in America. And then if the old buildings and mountains, such as this is Tabletop Mountain, where you can see these layers that look like melted rock, if they were melted down to cause these deserts, well, what about the glass? So if underneath the deserts all around the world we have these melted buildings and melted cities that lie underneath the sand, well, what about the glass? So it turns out that glass is a bit of a riddle. And what is it made of? Okay, some of you might be surprised to know that glass is made of some sand. And it takes heat and a few other elements to change the sand into glass. So what about the other way around? Can we go back from glass to sand? So this Science Focus article in the BBC Science Focus magazine asks, can we turn glass back into sand? And can that explain the deserts around the world? Can that explain what we're seeing around the world with the deserts? So in Africa, for instance, if we're talking about this extremely advanced race that built with red bricks and other materials, and then the carbon-14 is a good place for the fauna and the animal life to repopulate. So for instance, in Central America and South America, we see that the Amazon and these jungles cover the land. We also see this phenomenon I pointed out in the last video, whereas on the east side of these continents we seem to get the mountains, and that seems to be the same in Africa to some extent. And then we get these kind of plains on the western side, the central and the west side, to some extent. This is not a hard and fast rule. And then we're left over with some deserts that don't seem to have any carbon-14 at all, if that was either cooked out or leached. And also we're left with the equator, where the sun makes it difficult for life to grow, but obviously it used to grow in the past. And then we have these central areas. I'm quite interested in some of the theories that say that the Garden of Eden was in southern Africa and that Jerusalem was in southern Africa. So I like this idea that Tabletop Mountain is Meltology, and that these caves here, Kango caves, if we look at this and look at the pictures in South Africa, are we just looking at Meltology here? So you guys have got to be on board with the Meltology thing. It's not my job to convince you on that. I'm just going to take it that Tartarian Meltology guy is going to done that for you, and they're on board with at least open-mindedness to the Meltology, and I'm just trying to push that forward a little bit, or just to see where that could go. So some of these underground caves, they look like natural formations, but they also look like they could be the remnants of melted structures. If we just look into the past and see the past as much more sophisticated than we give it credit for. And I quite like the idea of tying things together with the ancient texts the Vedas, the Book of Revelation, the Bible, is that if we're looking at these as mythology, then perhaps the Book of Revelation, all the destruction from fire, maybe it has happened. Maybe that fits in with Meltology really well. That perhaps something did come down from above. If you look at the videos that I've done so far, I've kind of been through Meltology versus mud flood and petrification and tried to show how maybe that does fit in with the ancient flood mentioned in the Noah story, and maybe circuit board cities that exist today, or the idea of smart cities and grid cities, maybe they existed in the past too. There's lots of work from Martin Liedtke and the guys about water technology and antiquity technology, so I'm kind of just building on top of their work a little bit, trying to take that forward. I love this video by Mind Unveiled. I'm just going to leave the sound off and just look at some of the images of what, if you use the frame of Meltology, it does make sense that these are melted structures. It's just a different frame. It's a different way of looking at the world. It's difficult for some people too, because we just get born and we get taught into one frame. Whereas if we use multiple perspectives, and if we really allow ourselves to look at the world around us with the perspectives of, oh, well, possibly Meltology could be a thing. Could that explain what I'm looking at? And yeah, if you can just get rid of the pre-programming you've had and develop the ability to look using a different frame without being ridiculed into submission by the controllers or the people that find it so difficult to use multiple frames. These are the same people, by the way, that would have ridiculed ETs and aliens and are now busy eating up this Project Bluebeam stuff, that ETs and aliens are actually out there. So they've somehow jumped the divide on that. And to me, aliens and ETs still seems far-fetched if we could just explain it locally. I'd much rather explain it locally than travelling millions of light years. It still seems to me that the Earth being some kind of system, enclosed system, and local stars seems more sensible. It seems more rational than everything's billions of miles away. But yeah, this video by Mind Unveiled is great. Partly for gathering together images that help to explain what we're seeing, and partly because some of the theories that they are suggestion. So petrification, they seem to be linked kind of. So there's the whole petrified thing that does look like a city that's partially melted and then just, I don't know, covered in water and stopped melting. Was it the circuit board melting down? And then did the red bricks, were they a way of transferring and maintaining energy? So if we look at smart roads and that they could actually power vehicles and maybe power homes, well, you've got some pretty prestigious universities now that are saying that you can store energy in red bricks. So just imagine in the past that that's what they did. That might explain why there's lack of sensible forms of central heating in many buildings, where we've put fireplaces in, whereas actually guys like Martin Liedtke have shown that the fireplaces weren't fireplaces in the way that you understand them. So here's Science Daily, again storing energy in red bricks. Imagine plugging into your brick house. They can hold electricity like a battery. Brick has been used in walls and buildings for thousands of years, but rarely has it been found fit for any other use. Of course, they just say that the past was useless, regardless of the incredible buildings that we find. But it seems that if we can disconnect the modern day inventions to the past, it seems that there's a pretty good way of explaining. So this method converts bricks into a supercapacitor, according to this website. Storing energy in red bricks, wall could act as huge batteries, so it seems to be a common thing. And then I really like this human blood being used in paint as a binder, and also being used in bricks. So it's now saying it could be done, and there's scientific experience in it could be done, but maybe it already has been done. Maybe that's one of the uses for humans. One of the Matrix says we're just living there in a matrix. Well, maybe, the human body is actually very valuable in terms of bones, in the catacombs, and in terms of blood in bricks. Maybe if you can grow cows or humans or whatever it is. Maybe they have an intrinsic value far beyond just the labour that they can do. So there seems to be a lot of mainstream acknowledgement that bricks can contain human blood. It mentions here iron oxide and lime and then organic matter in this brick. I mentioned there was something in this website about if there's too much of an ingredient, the bricks can melt. So here we go. If you look at lime, the brick should contain a little amount of finely powdered lime, but excess lime will cause vitrification of bricks and causes the bricks to melt, which means that the bricks will then lose their shape and become disfigured, which is kind of what we see all the way around the world when we look at red bricks or red brick buildings. We see this disfigurement. So I'm just going to go back here to Petra. And we know that they call anything they don't understand a temple or a tomb. The pyramids are tombs and everything's a temple. They're very loath to call them components on circuit board cities. That is a conspiracy theory, obviously, and I've already started to get my first troll. Very proud of that. The trolls came in before anyone else, pretty much, to tell me how stupid the idea was. So thanks for that, guys. It's a badge of honour. And anything gets ridiculed as pseudoscience, whereas we can quite clearly see, just using this frame of melted cities, that it seems far more likely that we're living in the melted realm, a melted previous realm. So it's then just trying to put the pieces together. So the orphan trains, well, if you need to reset a civilization because they start to see the truth that they're going to be used for blood in buildings and their skeletons are going to be used in catacombs or whatever, you would have to reset every now and then. There might be natural resets that come from unstable systems, but they also might be human-made resets and combinations of both along the way. I'm always quite taken by the fact that at Macbeth, the witches are adding eyes of bat and whatever into their broth. And the ancients clearly used biological warfare to wipe us out. In the First World War, the human beings all across of Europe were striking, demanding more wages, and then coincidentally, we go into huge wars where there's massive loss of life. Human history is just full of these stories of meltdowns, strange phenomena, this comet or sun seeming to fall to Earth. Is this what happened? Did this what come down and melt things? Was it a technology? Was it something natural? Death and famine, more people died than remained alive in 1000 AD. Moses apparently heard this sort of destruction coming. So Spain looks like it's melted down in this image here in 1506. The comet came down and melted Spain, possibly. Was it a second sun? Just don't know. Just pretty open to ideas, to be honest. People hiding in cave dwellings in this one. And then just giant scale. And then things like Stonehenge that just seem to be reconstructing with some of the debris found around, and then trying to claim that's the limited hangout operation. Let's just talk about Stonehenge, and let's pretend that was the sophistication of the Neolithic age. Let's just try and obscure the fact that we're living in the remnants of a much, much, much higher civilization, and we're just kind of reinventing it. Maybe that protects the people who are reinventing it, allows them to stay in control. It allows them to maintain their power. Makes sense that that's what they would do. Scaliger, these guys that came up with chronologies, and there's disputed chronologies. Fomenko in Russia's doing some of that. I sometimes think that that's why Russia's so hated, is because Russia might not be fully controlled by this NWO that seems to just want to control everything. And maybe they've got good reasons to control everything. We just don't know. Maybe if human beings did know the truth, maybe it would be, a nightmare. But it just seems that they're so caught up in evil doings and covering up evil and doing evil things that the only reason that you'd possibly be able to justify what they do is if we did live in some kind of simulation that it didn't really matter and you might as well just use cheat codes. But yeah, it's difficult to hold up these controllers with any form of respect. So in terms of winged angels or creatures being able to fly, these jetpacks that they're using in the military now and for mountain rescue, these things seem to be a thing now that human beings can actually fly around fairly easily, no big deal. That future that was predicted a while ago, well, it seems that we're in that future. Human beings can fly. It won't be long before they have some sort of jetpacks with some kind of winged element to be able to combine jetpacks with flying. Pretty sure you'll just combine those two together. You might be able to use feathers in there and connect it to arms, because feathers obviously got some kind of use. So could we look at some jetpacks and combination with angel style wings at some point? Everything just seems to be recreated from the past. We just need to look at it with a different frame. Are those trumpets of sound technology kind of weapon, or ability to create liquefaction? The churches do seem to be buildings that can manipulate frequencies. Is it just frequencies in certain areas, or is it frequencies across the board? With the Antiquitech on top, were they a form of being able to manipulate radio frequencies that can cause energy? We looked in the last video of the link between Indiana Jones and Star Wars and how the two are actually connected. So I'd just say maybe the one flaw in that is that it's not outer space, but it's the space beyond the ice walls. There's quite nice videos recently explaining that possibly Mars is just an area outside of the ice wall, but local, a few thousand miles away. You can maybe travel to a separate system, maybe using a different sun over the top, but local rather than billions of miles away. Okay, I'm just going to flick through some of the other videos that I had set up. So this guy David Allison gives quite a good rundown of why he thinks that Revelation's already happened. Kind of not really a Bible scholar to this extent, but if it has already happened and we're living in the remnants of the meltdown, then that would explain quite a lot. Maybe means we don't need to be so worried about it happening again for a little while. But I really want someone to do an estimation of how many red bricks are used in London, UK, England, the world. How many red bricks have been used underneath the ground as well in what they call the sewers? Because it does seem to be a phenomenal. We're talking in the trillions of red bricks. It just doesn't make sense that the mainstream version of history can account for all that, and just account for just the style of building and just how incredible. So if a red brick it says here the red brick wall as can be recharged hundreds of thousands of times within an hour, and you can connect bricks, and you can actually give power to lighting. So if you connect bricks to solar cells, then you can provide lighting. So again, all sorts of phenomenal technologies that bricks seem to be connected to. This red pigment, the iron oxide, is essential and it can store energy, and it looks like possibly blood was part of this. But yeah, going back to the sand into glass and glass into sand, you can use glass for a lot of different technologies. And if you had enough heat, or if you had heat in a certain way to turn the glass back into sand, does that explain the deserts? Could it explain the deserts? Is there an event that could happen to change glass back into sand? These are all things that need exploring and need people just to turn their attention to and just explain it. Did we use glass far more? Could we have had cars made of glass? What other things could be made from glass? Is it just windows or just things? So it says here you can make glass by heating ordinary sand until it melts and turns into a liquid. And that's at 1,700 degrees centigrade. It says it's inexpensive to make, it's easy to shape when it's molten, and reasonably resistant to heat when it's set. And it's chemically inert, can be recycled. You can make bulletproof glass. So it's both a solid and a liquid. And looks like it can be used as solar panels. So are we looking at another form of energy capture? But what else can we use glass for? So solar panels on the roof, glass tops, ceramic worktops for cooking, microwaves, glass teapot, a glass wrapped car, bus, train, helicopter, glass on the photocopier, thermometers, fiberglass hulls in boats. So it's saying glass is a magic material we take for granted. It's everywhere and nowhere. So it's invisibly transparent. We don't even notice it's there. So these big structures then in Africa that we think in the Meltology world are melted sand, or we talk about brick flow. Well, what about glass flow? Are we missing the glass element of these buildings? Did the glass shatter and just turn into the sand? Back into sand? What is the process that would cause that to happen? Because on beaches around the world we sometimes find washed up glass everywhere. We see the different colours. We know there's technology in terms of stained glass windows. So glass technology, there's obviously people like, I don't know, Paul Cook and Martin Liedtke that have covered this before. So I'll probably need to just look back through some of their work and have a check on that stuff, or just post in the comments below. And yeah, please check out Paul Cook and Martin Liedtke in particular. Those guys, those two seem to be doing the heavy lifting, especially Liedtke. Martin Liedtke, Martin Matson. The man is just, honestly, he's phenomenal in terms of linking this all together. So please just watch some of his stuff. We need to be a community, helping each other link things together. Don't get caught up in the this is ridiculous, that's ridiculous. Just try and see through it. Try and get past it. I really don't think Meltology is distraction. I think Meltology is actually a useful stepping stone for where we need to get to. And as I'm trying to do, I'm linking up Meltology with circuit board, with technology, with science as we know it currently, and saying that, look, it seems to explain the past, the present, natural events, and you just don't need Maybe there is distant solar systems. Who knows? But you don't need that. Using Occam's razor, you just don't need that to find the truth that we're all looking for. What is the truth of the world? How does it link together? So yeah, Tabletop Mountain definitely looks like remnant of a huge building. This is just one tiny part of it. Just showing you, here's the new building and then built on the old buildings. Looks pretty obvious. And then let's go to Namibia, let's go to South Africa, let's go to Botswana, let's go to Zimbabwe, with using Meltology as the way of exploring it. We're looking at even Israel, we're looking at all these places in Africa. We really are looking at a melted world. And the same with Grand Canyon in America. We seem to be looking at a melted world. So here we go, Fish River Canyon in Namibia. It's the largest canyon in Africa, and it looks so similar to the Grand Canyon. So we need some explorers to get out there and to find evidence of caves, buildings, artifacts, just to make this come true for us. Anyway guys, peace out. I'm going to leave you there. Good luck to everyone searching for the truth.